Hello, everyone. I'm Dana Perino, along with Dr. Nicole Saphier, Juan Williams, Lawrence Jones, and Greg Gutfeld. It's 5 o'clock in New York City, and this is The Five. Fox News alert: a massive vote recount underway in Florida. This as new lawsuits are flying and the rhetoric is ramping up in the Senate race between Rick Scott and Bill Nelson. Scott's election night lead now narrowing to just under 13,000 as he accuses incumbent Nelson and Democrats of trying to steal the election.
Bill Nelson is clearly a sore loser. He can't stand the fact that he's not going to be elected for the first time in decades, and he won't. He's just here to steal this election. That's what he's done. His lawyer came down here and said, "I'm here to win the election. I'm not here to get a free and fair election, make sure votes are counted." No, he wants to win the election. That's his only purpose. We still don't understand how they went in these two counties and had a dramatic increase. Another 93,000 votes were cast, or somehow they came up with 93,000 votes after election night. We still don't know how they came up with that. So we're trying to figure out exactly what happened. I've asked the Florida Department of Law Enforcement to go in and do an investigation to find out what happened here. But we clearly know the judges have already said they clearly violated the law.
Meanwhile, Nelson is now calling on Scott to recuse himself from the recount process.
And one fact is that Rick Scott isn't interested in making sure every lawful vote is counted. And the second is that he's using his power as governor to try to undermine the voting process.
And President Trump weighing in, tweeting that Florida's elections are, quote, massively infected after reports that provisional ballots were mixed up in Broward County. So here we go again. One big difference, Greg, between this recount and the one that everyone remembers from 2000 is that Bush and Gore were separated by just a few hundred votes.
Right.
This is at least 13,000 votes. And most people I talked to today said they expect that once the recounts are done, that Scott will be the winner.
Yeah, I love the phrase massively infected. It's so medical, doctor. So yes, but it tells you how bad government is, that something that they do every 2 years, they act like it's a first time for them. I mean, this is basically an oil change and a tune-up for democracy, but they're like soap opera characters with amnesia. It's like, oh my God, we had no idea we had to do this.
In the same two counties.
In the same two counties. It's a typical bureaucratic incompetence that drives me nuts. And I know we'd blame Florida, but it actually is the counties, Broward County. I mean, it's like if Florida were the Brady Bunch, Broward County is Cousin Oliver. You know, it comes late and very irritating and basically ruins the whole show. And also, I'm really, really annoyed by people who said, like, if you dare to question the voting system, that's an attack on democracy. Same people who said that if you doubted that Russia affected 2016, it's borderline treason.
Well,
so it's a lot of hypocrisy.
The other thing, Lawrence, is they're not even sure they can finish the recount in time, but then the judge says you have to do it, so it's now mixed up in the courts as well.
Yeah, and they didn't meet the deadline, which was Saturday. Look, I think a lot of people have been debating the reasoning, and I think that's irrelevant because when you look at Broward County, there's a lot of shady business happening there. Destroying of the ballots. The court ruled in 26 and reprimanded the county for that. Counting unlawful votes. Violating the Sun Law violation and not meeting deadlines. I mean, all of those, whether it's because of you're supporting a Democratic candidate, you're not meeting the standard. And this just didn't start with the new leadership in 2003 when she took over. Mm-hmm. But her boss got fired for grave neglect, mismanagement, and incompetence. So this is a history in Broward County. The question is, why didn't Rick Scott fire her when he had control of this? Before this became about his race, this incompetence has been going on for a long time. I think this is how you got a Donald Trump in office, because if he was running this state, she would have been fired a long time ago.
But Juan, help me remember, like, did he have power to fire her? I don't think so.
Rick Scott, I'm sorry, Juan. I think Rick Scott did say that he didn't have the power to do that.
Yeah, I don't think so. Right. Juan, your thoughts on this?
Well, man, to me, it's like, is there any evidence of fraud? Has anything gone wrong? What did the court say? Well, the judge says no, there's no evidence. In fact, when you ask the Republicans on site, you know, what evidence do you have to say we should stop this recount? They say we don't have any, but we are suspicious. And what you hear from President Trump is, how come they never find any Republican votes? Well, in fact, they do find Republican votes, but you're dealing with Broward County, and I think it's pretty clear that Nelson, that's a stronghold for Senator Nelson. Mm-hmm. It's also true, just to pick up on what Lawrence was saying, I think I have numbers here, it indicates like 4,600 efforts at recounts or reviews since between 2000 and 2016. And it's only 26 of those 4,000 who ever resulted in any change whatsoever in the outcome. So when you have President Trump and the Republicans saying, stop it, boy, does that look political. And you know who, by the way, who they're stopping on this, you know, as we celebrate Veterans Day? Overwhelmingly, the mail-ins come from the military.
Well, there was the question, though, of the ballots that didn't get counted correctly and the different ones. There's not hanging chads, Dr. Sapphire, but it is of concern. The integrity of the election is in question. So at this point, it seems like no matter how it turns out, half of the people are going to think that it was rigged against them.
Well, look, recounts don't change when you have a 5-digit lead. We know that. And so I take Juan's pragmatic approach here. As soon as these recounts are done, the Republicans are still going to win in these seats. And, you know, the thing that bothers me is this has become a little bit more political than it needed to. Legally, it was a very narrow margin. They needed to do the recount. That is following the rule of law. We're doing the recount, and now it's just getting politicized. You're having tweets being sent. You're having people on both sides kind of yelling at each other. And it really does cause great consternation for the American people. And really, following rule of law, I don't really like seeing counting ballots past deadline, having them say invalidated ballots are now going to become validated. That's when things get really muddy. Take the votes that were there on election night, take those that are valid, count those. At the end of the day, the Republicans are still going to take it, and let's move on.
You know what I have trouble with is the idea that in Georgia you have Brian Kemp, who was running for governor, but also the attorney general in charge of the election.
Secretary of State.
And then in Florida, here you have the governor, Rick Scott, now trying to interfere with the system. And what you hear from...
How's he interfering?
But because he is saying he wants it done this way and he wants it stopped.
He's saying
and
I think way, Juan.
That's not illegal. It's
in
legal.
2016, the judge found out that there was impropriety.
This is 2018. This is 2018. There's nothing. The judge has said zero.
Juan, the bottom line is that there is a pattern of behavior in that office. They've been reprimanded by a judge. She shouldn't be there.
Here's the pattern that I see, Lawrence. That you have Republican office holders who decide they can interfere in an election when they don't like something that they see going on.
Sounds
and
familiar.
So you think it's
corruption.
That's
why you have them saying
it's okay to destroy ballots. It's okay not to meet the deadlines. It's okay to violate the sunshine law.
If the judge saw any of that, if the judges saw any of that, they would say that there's something illegal. They have not said any such thing.
I don't know. If I were to had to pick who to trust in a fight over ballots, it would be the party that's for voter ID, not the party that's against it. That's one way to look at it. It's like there's one that's always for a process that's more reliable.
But even if you have voter ID, you still have this problem, this antiquated system with this paper.
Yeah.
And I know that there are concerns about hacking if you do something electronically, but it seems to me that is
if we could trust our financial, I mean, look.
I know, everything you do on here.
You could probably trust
an
an
election.
election.
I would trust? I wouldn't trust the party that's for voter suppression, I'll tell you that. I wouldn't do that.
And that's the
I'm against voter suppression.
Oh, good.
Me too.
Me too.
So, unless it's Juan. I want to suppress Juan's vote.
Okay, well, we'll have that out in the commercial break. Nancy Pelosi and Democrats gearing up to go after the president and reportedly have 85 Trump-related targets. Her latest comments up next.
This is a Fox News alert. Wildfires raging in California, killing 31 people. More than 200 are also missing. Let's go to Jeff Paul in Malibu for the very latest. Jeff?
Juan, the winds are really starting to kick up here in Southern California, and this is what firefighters are worried would happen once that started. Some of these hot spots would reignite. New fires would start here in Southern California. Now, the most devastating fires right now happening in Northern California. That is the Camp Fire, where 29 people have been killed. Another 200 are unaccounted for, and officials believe that death toll could rise. Further down south here, the Woolsey fire continues to burn. It is more than 90,000 acres, only 20% contained, and so far has killed 2 people. Now, coming back out here live, you see in this backyard, this was a home that burned down in the fire, and it is all the way over in Malibu. This fire started, it looks like, more in the canyon area, and with these gusts picking up, firefighters are worried that that containment level might only go down. Juan?
Jeff Paul in Malibu. Boy, it looks shocking. President Trump is also being criticized for a tweet about the wildfires, reportedly upsetting some of the first responders on the ground. Another story we're following here, Axios is reporting Democrats are ready to fire off a, quote, subpoena cannon and have at least 85 Trump-related targets for their probes. House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi is vowing her party's use of authority will be focused.
We are not scattershot. We are not doing any investigation for a political purpose, but to seek the truth. So I think a word that you could describe about how Democrats will go forward in this regard is we will be very strategic.
Nicole, what do you expect?
And I honestly expect for the next 2 years to be in a perpetual state of acrimony. You know, they're already mentioning that they have maybe up to 85 things that they want to investigate. We know a lot of things are on their mind, from the travel bans, family separation, Russia probes. My hope is that they would focus on the things that really mean a lot to American people, like the economy. It's an untainted, measurable metric. We're already doing a great job here. They need to focus on trade, immigration, healthcare reform. And if they can really work in a bipartisan manner, then I think 2020 will be very interested. But if they focus only on these investigations, then I think everyone's going to be very upset. And the next 2 years are going to be a waste of everyone's lives.
Lawrence, how do you see it? Because what you heard from Nancy Pelosi there is it's not going to be scattershot. They have specific targets, like getting the president's tax returns, like investigating his family business in some cases.
But what right do they have to his taxes?
Well, they have no right, but they can
so
request
what are they requesting?
Well, there's
no legal process.
It's traditional.
Well, it's traditional that people give up their taxes, but there is no legal right for a candidate to give it up. So it's political, right?
No, I don't think it's political. No,
there's no right. There's no investigation that needs to happen. He has a right to withhold his taxes. The second thing, the colluding with Russia. Why are they getting involved with this? And they told us that they were wanting Mueller to finish his investigation.
I think they say they do want Mueller to.
No, they don't. They want to get involved. They want to have their own separate investigation as well as Robert Mueller's investigation. So this seems like, and we were just talking about the case in Florida, it seems like the Democrats are targeting their political opponents right here, because they don't want, for months, actually years, they've said, trust Robert Mueller, let him complete his investigation. Now they want their own investigation. They're going after his taxes when they have no legal right about it. And then there's this notion that they also said they want to investigate the president for going after the press. This president has been very open to the press. Now, he has a hostile relationship with them, but as far as access, I think he's been one of the most transparent. Sometimes he says too much to the press. So again, I think this is all politics. There's no legal recourse for it. This is just the Democrats taking control of their power.
Dana, clearly the voters thought this was high in terms of the poll numbers, that having a check on President Trump was important to them. Does what Pelosi's talking about, what Schumer's talking about, constitute that check, or is it excessive?
Well, Americans do like divided government. This happened. This is why it's traditional, or the pattern is that whoever the president is in power, they lose seats in that first midterm, often the second one as well. I think that Nancy Pelosi is trying to say, look, I'm going to be very measured. This is all going to be fine. But there are 5 things working against that notion. One, the committee chairmen have a lot of power at their disclosure, right? So you think about somebody like a Devin Nunes, for example, right? He was able to do things. Second, you have at least 6 senators who want to run for president in 2020. How are they going to get attention? They're going to talk about Donald Trump, because it's the only way for them to get attention. The third thing is a restless base. All these Democrats who just won believe that their voters want them to investigate Donald Trump. 4 is the media. There's going to be leaks to the media. The media is going to look for stories, and it's going to be everywhere. And the 5th thing is some people in the president's cabinet or in the administration make themselves ripe for targeting. So while Nancy Pelosi might say she wants to be very measured and cautious, I don't think that these things are going to allow that to happen.
In fact, just picking up on what Dana said, Greg, I just saw today it said like 64% of Democrats want the president to be impeached.
Right. That's true. I mean, I think this is a great move on the Democrats. But why with 85? Go to 100. I'm sure Barron did something at a playground years ago that's merit investigation. I think the chef once served pasta that wasn't al dente. No, and it was to the Italian Prime Minister, Dana. They should appoint Avenatti. Have him in charge, because you learn nothing from the Kavanaugh hearing. Using your power to ruin people over politics, you're going to lose an election. And to your point about Adam Schiff, calling on a hearing to about criticizing the press.
Yeah.
How 1984 is that? For Schiff to pull this off, he has to believe that Trump is claiming the First Amendment is the enemy of the people when he was just talking about fake news. But Schiff is actually saying, let's galvanize our political power to go after somebody who criticized the press. That's scary crap.
Well, this goes farther back than the Kavanaugh hearings. This goes to 1998 with Clinton's. Republicans were focused so much on Clinton that they lost popularity, and they lost a lot of seats because of that. So the Democrats are just going to do the exact same thing.
And the subpoena cannon, it's like a T-shirt cannon. So you're going to sit there out in front of the White House and you get a subpoena.
Yes.
But I wanted to talk about the press for a second because I was listening to you. But isn't it true that, in fact, in the case of Jim Acosta of CNN, they took his credentials. They said you can't come in, or when you stop and think about some of the steps they took with that video, where people say essentially they doctored a video and then put it out as an official issue.
Let's just see if they're
Greg.
listening in
Jim
on
Acosta,
reporters'
no one's shutting him up, man.
Right.
And he did a 90-minute presser. Trump kept talking. This is the most transparent president, and Acosta's still out there. It's not like he put him in a cage.
But you can't deny the press access to an American White House?
When he's disrespecting the White House,
I don't think
it's
the question.
I think that
you can ground somebody.
I think that revoking his hard pass was disproportionate.
I did too.
Okay, but I also don't think that Adam
a hearing?
Schiff needs to check into
And he didn't
it.
block CNN completely. They allowed another reporter to come.
Well, I'm going to stop there because I feel passionately about that one. Is it time to get ready for Hillary 4.0? Gee whiz, what a former advisor is saying about Clinton's possible 2020 plans. Yes, 2020.
Who predicted
That's next
this?
on the file.
That's true, though.
Yes.
Nice.
Reportedly ready to hitch their wagons to Beto O'Rourke in a potential 2020 presidential run, even though he lost to Senator Ted Cruz in the midterms. And if that doesn't work, a former advisor to the Clintons says he believes Hillary is gearing up for yet another run for the White House.
Don't underestimate Hillary's positioning to run again. She's got a 75% approval among Democrats. She's positioned herself with the core of the Democratic base. And I think she's going to sit back, see how this develops. If she does go, it will be because no one emerges as a clear front runner. It looks like the party is splintered in lots of different ways, and she can come in. Clintons never stop until they get where they want to go.
So I'm going to go to you, Dana. I think this is harassment at this point of the American voter. How many times do they have to say no before it gets in her skull? Do you think this is just a search for power?
Look, I am going to refuse to speculate on a Hillary Clinton run until she says she's actually running, because I think that this is not true. I don't think she's going to run again, but there are a couple of pieces in there that I think are true. One, that she feels extremely aggrieved and that it was unfair and that this election was stolen from her, perhaps with Russian involvement. I think that she does think that that's true. But I also think that when Mark Pence says that she has a 75% approval rating amongst Democrats, I think that's because they think she's not running again. Like, you're nice to people when they've lost and they're moving on, like, oh yeah, she's fine and nice. But if she were to actually run again, there are so many Democrats who will say, we cannot afford to run that same race again, because a midterm is a referendum on the president's performance. Okay, fine. But an election for a president is a choice between two people. In that choice, last time around, President Trump won. Why would they do that again?
Well, she's an icon among Democrats, and I think that you're exactly right in saying that lots of Democrats think the Russians and the Russian propaganda, and even Jim Comey coming out when he did, stole the election from Hillary Clinton, the first woman to be a party's major presidential nominee. The thing is, I don't think, and I agree with you on this, I don't think most Democrats think that she's the one. I think they want fresh faces. I think they want some energizing focus here. And potentially, given what we saw in the midterms with a lot of women coming up and a lot of veterans, a lot of young people, I think they're not after a sort of fiery go at Trump in Trumpian style. They're looking for pragmatists who come at it in terms of the issues that took Democrats over the finish line in 2018, which is things like health care and a focus on jobs and a focus on income inequality in this country. So I think you're going to see a large number of people. My sense is that, let 1,000 flowers bloom, but I don't think Hillary Clinton's the rose.
So, Greg, a lot of people are shifting to Beto O'Rourke, even though he lost in Texas because his numbers were so close. But wasn't that because Cruz was just a bad candidate? Because Abbott won 55-42.
Yeah, I just think that another middle-aged white guy, how racist. I don't think it's happening. I believe that Hillary is going to run, and I've said this before. I said it months ago. She doesn't want on her obituary, she lost to Donald to be the lead. Yeah. A heroic rematch can change the story, but does the story of her coming back outweigh the disdain that the party feels for her for not running a strong campaign? My dream is for Hillary to re-enter, and it looks like it's hers, and then bam, Michelle comes in and pushes her aside, just like it's 2008 all over, but it's the other Obama.
But
that's my dream. That's my dream.
You think Michelle would run?
No, it's just his dream.
It's my dream. I have a lot of dreams. I have a lot of dreams, Lawrence. Sometimes you're in them.
Yeah, about you, Nicole.
Way too much.
Do you think?
Does he have a medical problem?
I have many medical problems.
Oh, boy.
Do you think the Democrats need to move past Hillary Clinton and kind of put her in the back and get fresh blood, but not the extreme?
The Democrats have moved past this, as has every other American except Hillary Clinton. And the election was not stolen from her. For some reason, democracy is only called into question when Democrats, or just specifically Hillary Clinton loses something. So she needs to move forward. I also am not quite sure that she's going to run. I think this may just all be hype. But if she did, it'd be a very different Hillary Clinton. You'd go from our 2008 centrist to the 2020 leftist progressive, because she's the horse of many different colors. She changes her policies with the wind based on how she's going to get the most votes. And it continues to lose for her. And she's not the candidate. She's not the right person to lead. And again, I'm not sure she's going to do it. I think this is all hype. But if she did,
yeah, but it's hype coming from the right. Republicans enjoy this. I think they love beating up Hillary so much.
Highly entertaining watching.
That's what I think.
Keep going.
Until there's someone else. I mean, right now, when it comes to Democratic leadership, it's well, yeah, that's true. But it's Pelosi, Obama, and Hillary Clinton. Those are the three that are in the lead until there's a primary.
I think this is all because there's a vacuum for leadership. One, I don't know if you agree, but I think this all goes back to the Democrats having an identity crisis. They don't know what they believe. They don't know what they're for. All they know is that they hate Donald Trump at the moment, and that can only take you so far. And so if no one fills that vacuum, then Hillary Clinton will.
No, she won't. I mean, I think that it's very unlikely that Hillary Clinton runs. Is she someone who is a power broker within the party? Can she, put her blessings on someone and have it be added value? I think that's true, Lawrence, and I think that's going to be true. But the key here at this moment is Republicans have a vacuum, not the Democrats. Yeah. The Republican vacuum is we need somebody to be the face of the Democrats so we can beat them up.
Lawrence, I think it's sexist that you expect a woman to fill the vacuum.
Yeah. Sometimes it's like that. Anyway, Dan Crenshaw gets the last laugh after being mocked on Saturday Night Live.
Lieutenant Commander Dan Crenshaw, everyone, thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for making a Republican look good.
You gotta stop saying that, man. You've been saying it all day.
More from the Congressman-elect ahead on The Five.
On SNL last Saturday, comic Pete Davidson apologized to Congressman-elect Dan Crenshaw for mocking his war wound.
I made a joke about Lieutenant Commander Dan Crenshaw. Dan Crenshaw, and on behalf of the show and myself, I apologize. It was a poor choice of words. The man is a war hero, and he deserves all the respect in the world.
Now, in case you forgot, this is what Davidson had said initially about Crenshaw last week.
You may be surprised to hear he's a congressional candidate from Texas and not a hitman in a porno movie. I'm sorry, I know he lost his eye in war or whatever.
Now you need to remember that Crenshaw hadn't actually demanded an apology. In fact, he tapped the brakes on the always revving outrage machine.
I want us to get away from this culture where we demand apologies every time someone misspeaks. I think that would be very healthy for our nation to go in that direction. We don't need to be outwardly outraged. I don't need to demand apologies from them.
But SNL knew what it had to do to quell a PR nightmare, and that is man up.
I'm sorry.
Thank you, Pete. I appreciate you saying that.
So we good?
We're good. Apology accepted.
Just keep breathing.
It sounds like my phone's ringing.
That's cool. It's cool, man. Yeah.
This is Pete Davidson. He looks like if the meth from Breaking Bad was a person.
Not bad.
Face to face. So rare these days when we hide behind firewalls and lawyers. But SNL went further, giving Crenshaw the space to speak at length about veterans and unity.
Americans can forgive one another. We can remember what brings us together as a country and still see the good in each other. This is Veterans Day weekend, which means that it's a good time for every American to connect with a veteran. Tell a veteran, never forget. When you say never forget to a veteran, you are implying that as an American, you are in it with them. And never forget those we lost on 9/11, heroes like Pete's father. So I'll just say, Pete, never forget.
Never forget.
Well, that's legitimately awesome. So there were 3 winners here. Crenshaw for his reasonable response to a careless comment, SNL for finding a clever way to clean up a mess, and America for being handed an honest-to-God blueprint for dealing with future outrages. Instead of ramping up the rage, it dialed it back. We've said it here before. It's beyond time to stop chasing scalps, demanding apologies, only to then refuse them. Haven't we had enough of the mob, the constant indignation, the judgmental hordes of bored souls spoiling for a fight? I know I have. So here Crenshaw initiated the new way forward. Express your opinion, don't condemn, and see what happens. SNL responded with humble, good humor. And it's all good, and dare I say, human. Finally, a skit worth repeating.
Dan Crenshaw, quite refreshing. I remember when he was in a 9-person primary, because there was an open seat in Houston, and he was trying to get attention, and there was a woman that was running on the Republican side. She was very, very wealthy and spending all sorts of money. He didn't have any money to run, and so what he decided to do was to actually run his district, 100 miles, 25 miles over 4 days, and try to get attention that way. And I think what's happened is that Houston has found itself a great new leader. They have this congressman who, okay, look, the pop culture, it's not going to be nice to him forever.
Right, true.
Okay? But so he should just take this moment. But it was a really good lesson about leadership. I also appreciated the suggestion for what to say to a soldier. Rather than thank you for your service, to say never forget. I like that.
No, that's very good. Juan, I think this needs to be reposted every time there's a new outrage. Like every week, somebody's already pissed off about something. This is kind of how you solve the problem.
Yeah, you know, so to me, this was so classic and so good. I just agreed with you. I just can't get over Crenshaw's. I'm sorry?
Did that just happen? You're agreeing with Greg?
It's not often, but it does happen. It does happen. I thought that Dan Crenshaw was super classy, and I thought he was classy from the start. Don't mistake me, because I thought when he said, I don't need an apology.
Right.
You know, people say silly stuff all the time. And I think it was really, you know, above and beyond for him to actually come to New York and go on the show and go through the whole thing. I just thought it was terrific. And what's interesting to me about Crenshaw is he's not your prototypical politician. He's a guy who's a Republican, but he's been highly critical of President Trump, for example. And it strikes me that we need more people like this in public office.
Well, veteran especially, Lawrence.
Especially on Veterans Day. I think there's a class of 12 or something veterans coming in this time.
Yes.
But we're seeing more veterans and also more female veterans. And I think that's a good thing. Yeah, in fact, there's a PAC right now, Nicole, that promotes veterans running, because guess what? Veterans know each other in moments of real threat as Americans.
They know reality.
They don't care if they're Republican or Democrat.
Yeah, I thought it was a good moment. I thought it was something that the country can embrace or, you know, behind. I just didn't think it was necessary, me personally, just because I think that so often people on the right are on the receiving end of this.
Yes.
And the tone that normally is set is that fire that person, get rid of them. And you say one thing and it destroys your career. And so I don't want to get in these constant apology tours. I mean, I've seen it on the college campuses at the Leadership Institute Campus Forum, where they just, the mob will take over something so simple that could have been handled behind closed doors. So good gesture, very polite, cool to see. I'm just not big of a celebration of it. Though.
You think that this is like more of an isolated incident?
It's an isolated incident, and quite frankly, if I'm honest, it was forced. It was forced. The executives called him and was like, look, you've ticked off the veterans, all right?
Yeah.
We got to do something to make this right. If it wasn't about that, then they would have did it behind closed doors.
Interesting point.
But it wasn't a teleprompter, so it's not like it was just a slip of the tongue.
Yeah. Doc?
You know, I really love what I'm seeing in Congressman-elect Dan Crenshaw. I love the way he handled it from day number one and not demanding an apology. I think it's great that he actually went on SNL and he had a little fun with it. It shows his personality. I'm really excited to see what he's going to do in office. I think Pete Davidson's apology was mediocre at best. You know, I wish we didn't even get to a point where there's an apology. I agree. I don't necessarily know if we needed one. I can't believe that the comment came out of his mouth. His father died in 9/11 when he was a young boy. And Dan Crenshaw lost his eye on his third combat tour in Afghanistan a year after 9/11. And he's going to mock him for that? I mean, I don't understand where the thought process is. And that, as you said, it was not off the cuff. This was a written statement. So that was coming. And I still just can't wrap my head around the fact that they thought that that was okay.
I will go back to my defense, you know, even though I said it was a lousy joke, that for some types of humor, the humor is in the fact that it's awful, that you're saying something that is so objectionable, it can't be real.
If it came from any place other than SNL, who makes a mockery of Republicans every week, then maybe I would see a little bit of humor in it, as long as Dan Crenshaw did as well and wasn't offended. But they make a mockery of Republicans, so they were making a mockery specific of him.
Maybe. Gee, I wonder, is there anybody else in American life who regularly mocks people?
You can watch Dan Crenshaw's exclusive interview with Martha MacCallum. That's her on the right there. Tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern. Up next, we're asking Dr. Sapphire some very, very personal questions. All of our rapid-fire medical questions. I have some issues I need to discuss on the 5.
All right, since the last time I was here, my fellow Fivers have been thinking about a lot of medical questions. So I'm making another house call with the Ask the Doctor Anything. And by the way, I didn't get to see these questions beforehand, so it's
unlike
rapid
someone
firing.
else who we won't name. Right?
Yes, there are some TV doctors that may get questions ahead of time. We don't do that here.
We don't do that here.
It's all
Some guy who lives in Oz?
I don't know.
I didn't say that.
Nope, she didn't say it. Okay, who goes first?
Dana, please.
Okay, I get to go first.
Of course.
Are you flu shot, no flu shot?
It depends on who you're asking, but my blanket response is absolutely yes, flu shot, especially for children, elderly, pregnant women, and if you come into contact with any of these people regularly. Don't necessarily need to do it for yourself, but do it to protect those around you.
Multivitamin, no multivitamin?
You don't necessarily need a multivitamin as long as you eat a balanced diet.
Oh, really? So no multivitamin? Well, balanced diet, that's hard.
That's a good segue.
Okay, I have a question about lotion. So I've been reading these things that now doctors are saying you shouldn't put lotion on all the time because then your body will always need lotion.
Well, there's a lot of things with lotion. So some people aren't liking a lot of creams because of the parabens and the chemicals in it, and they
Yeah, I
do
have no
some
problem with that.
Okay, moving on. When it comes to if you can constantly moisturize your body, then yes, your pores and your skin get used to that moisture, and so it's not necessarily making its own moisture, so therefore it's now needing that and not producing its own.
You should just put the lotion in the
Why
basket.
is it when you go to a doctor, they always tell you, no matter what it is, to drink more water?
I didn't hear what Greg said. So
I didn't either. Let's ignore that. Why does
What
every
is
doctor-
this?
It's the number one thing. If there's anything I can tell you, drink more water. It keeps your entire body hydrated. It's good for your skin, your heart, your kidneys, your brain, anything possible about your body.
Do you have another
Water's good
question?
for
No,
it.
I'm all done, and you can
All
go
right,
to your
Greg,
weird
please,
questions
by
now.
all means.
Well, I'm trying to think of something that you see a lot of X-rays, so I imagine that you must see things in X-rays that are quite unusual.
Hamsters.
That question was directed at Dr. Sapphire, not to you, Juan.
I want to ask you about the placebo effect. All right, there was a big article in the New York Times about how the placebo effect obviously is real, and that it's kind of interesting. So I keep thinking, if we believe that the placebo effect has this influence, should we get rid of the side effects part of drug commercials?
Oh.
Because when I am watching the drug commercials, I know I'm not the only one, and I hear them do the side effects, I get very, very uncomfortable.
You start to feel those side effects.
Yes,
You know,
and I'm just thinking, isn't that kind of a safety hazard to read side effects to millions of people?
Well, that's legislative action. They mandated that the side effects are on those commercials. I personally don't think drugs companies should be on commercials. I think this is between a physician and a patient and not on TV, because then you have patients actually coming to the doctor demanding what they feel that they should be on. The placebo effect, though, if you hear all the side effects, yes, sometimes you think that you tend to get them, or you are too scared to take a medication. But you can't not tell patients about these side effects unless you're going to take away the repercussions of suing the physician, if any side effects, or the drug company.
How come some red wine makes me need to go to the bathroom?
Number one or number two?
Two. Like, is there something there's certain red wines I can drink and other ones that I can't?
Sure, it all depends on the acid, the tannic, and I don't know about your bowel habits. There's probably other issues.
I have a chart that I made.
Okay, one.
Hey, by the way, when you were talking about vitamins, there've been lots of reporting about vitamin D recently. What's your?
Yes.
You think it's a good thing, a bad thing? Should we take one?
Hoax.
All right, so if you're taking vitamin D or fish oil supplements, there's nothing to say to stop taking it right now, but there's big data coming out right now, a big government-funded study with like 26,000 patients that say, by the way, it might not be doing anything for cancer prevention and heart health.
Right.
So eat a diet with fish and have plenty of milk growing up, and then you're probably good enough, get enough sun exposure. This does not talk about vitamin D and bone health. We know vitamin D is good for bone health, but we're showing that these supplements aren't necessarily helping reduce risk of cancer or heart disease.
But it's still good for you, is what you're saying.
Everything in moderation. Have a conversation with your physician, because there's positives and negatives.
We don't have time for that. That's why you're here.
All right, one quick question. I'm into dieting. No carb diets, is that healthy for your body? Because a lot of people are doing it.
I'm against extremism of all forms. And
That's extreme.
It is extreme. And so I think everything in moderation. I don't think that you should do these extreme diets.
So no paleo, keto.
That's the best diet. Come on, Doc.
They're short-term fixes.
Low carb, high protein, high fat.
No.
Look at me. I've lost like 50 pounds.
She's the MD.
I'm lying.
Long-term sustainable, and it's bad for your kidneys long-term. So I would say
I have two kidneys, though.
everything in moderation.
All right.
Maintain. All right, guys. One more thing is up next.
Low carb is.
Hey mama, don't need no trust. Wanna love you.
All right, since the last time I was here, my fellow Fivers have been thinking about a lot of medical questions. So I'm making another house call with the Ask the Doctor Anything. And by the way, I didn't get to see these questions beforehand, so it's
Unlike
rapid
someone
firing.
else who we won't name. Right?
Yes, there are some TV doctors that may get questions ahead of time. We don't do that here.
We don't do that here.
It's all
Some guy who lives in Oz.
I don't know.
I didn't say that.
Nope, she didn't say it. Okay, who goes first?
Dana, please.
Okay, I get to go first.
Of course.
Are you flu shot, no flu shot?
It depends on who you're asking, but my blanket response is absolutely yes, flu shot, especially for children, elderly, pregnant women, and if you come into contact with any of these people regularly. Don't necessarily need to do it for yourself, but do it to protect those around you.
Multivitamin, no multivitamin?
You don't necessarily need a multivitamin as long as you eat a balanced diet.
Oh, really? So no multivitamin? Well, balanced diet, that's hard.
That's a good segue.
Okay, I have a question about lotion. So I've been reading these things that now doctors are saying you shouldn't put lotion on all the time because then your body will always need lotion.
Well, there's a lot of things with lotion. So some people aren't liking a lot of creams because of the parabens and the chemicals in it, and they
Yeah, I
do
have no
some
problem with that.
Okay, moving on. When it comes to if you can constantly moisturize your body, then yes, your pores and your skin get used to that moisture, and so it's not necessarily making its own moisture, so therefore it's now needing that and not producing its own.
You should just put the lotion in the
Why is it
basket.
when you go to a doctor, they always tell you, no matter what it is, to drink more water?
I didn't hear what Greg said. So
I didn't either. Let's ignore that. Why does that
What
make
is
water
this?
It's the number one thing. If there's anything I can tell you, drink more water. It keeps your entire body hydrated. It's good for your skin, your heart, your kidneys, your brain, anything possible about your body.
Do you have another
Water's good
question?
for it.
No, I'm all done, and you can
All
go
right,
to your
Greg,
weird
please,
questions
by
now.
all means.
Well, I'm trying to think of something that you see a lot of X-rays, so I imagine that you must see things in X-rays that are quite unusual.
Hamsters.
That question was directed at Dr. Sapphire, not to you, Juan.
I want to ask you about the placebo effect. All right, there was a big article in the New York Times about how the placebo effect obviously is real, and that it's kind of interesting. So I keep thinking, if we believe that the placebo effect has this influence, should we get rid of the side effects part of drug commercials.
Oh.
Because when I like am watching the drug commercials, I know I'm not the only one, and I hear them do the side effects, I get very, very uncomfortable.
You start to feel those side effects.
Yes, and I'm just thinking, isn't that kind of a safety hazard to read side effects to millions of people?
Well, that's legislative action. They mandated that the side effects are on those commercials. I personally don't think drugs companies should be on commercials. I think this is between a physician and a patient and not on TV, because then you have patients actually coming to the doctor demanding what they feel that they should be on. The placebo effect, though, if you hear all the side effects, yes, sometimes you think that you tend to get them, or you are too scared to take a medication. But you can't not tell patients about these side effects unless you're going to take away the repercussions of suing the physician, if any side effects, or the drug company.
How come some red wine makes me need to go to the bathroom?
Number one or number two?
Two. Like is there something in? Is there like there's certain red wines I can